I'm a simple guy. So I have very simple questions I have to ask. The Ukrainian conflict started on the 24th of February 2022 according to the Western media. That means that America, the NATO, the EU, the IMF, and the biggest companies like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street are supporting Ukraine with military and humanitarian aid. Let's call this group the Collective West. My questions are really simple. What is the goal of Ukraine in this conflict, and what is the goal of the Collective West? I mean, if the Ukrainian goal is to take back territories which are occupied by Russia right now, then I do not seem to understand how is it possible that the Collective West was unable to give enough help for Ukraine to achieve that goal in 1.5 years. As I understand, neither Russia nor the Collective West want to start a large conflict what can lead to a world war, but that means logically that the Collective West has a different goal than Ukraine. If the goal of the West is not to do anything to trigger a serious retaliation from Russia, then it means that the goal of the West is to weaken Russia and its position globally and especially in Europe, and that means that the Collective West is not interested in ending this conflict fast with military power or with diplomacy because it would not serve Western interest. If this is true, then it means that Ukraine is locked in a conflict by its own allies, and these allies are investing serious assets and money into a conflict what they do not wish to end anytime soon. Just to be clear, Ukraine has no saying or choice about its own future. Either Russia is defeating the Ukrainian military by reducing its numbers and effectiveness to meaningless, or the West will make a deal with Russia and Ukraine will have to accept it, because every aid Ukraine was given by the West was in a form of debt. It was never a charity. So the conclusion is that maybe this 1.5 years of conflict and this failed counteroffensive on the part of Ukraine was intentional. The West wants Ukraine to prolong this conflict, so the military aid what was given to the Ukrainians was never intended to be effective. I mean, tanks without air support are useless, artillery without enough range to reach the enemy is also useless, not to mention that anything what the West gives for Ukraine is targeted by Russia, because it is advertised in every possible way just like the plan for the counteroffensive was. So the West clearly signals to Russia that as a punishment for their decision to move into Ukraine will be a long conflict, but on the other hand the West is giving Russia clear information about weapons and strategy about the conflict, so the West and Russia will not escalate this conflict to the point where it is too dangerous. I would really like to know how many people would support one side or another in this conflict, if they would know that all the hundreds of thousands of people who died in it, and will die in it, and all the millions who left the Ukraine made a sacrifice, so Russia and the West could basically renegotiate their geopolitical position. I understand that America became weak geopolitically and economically, so Russia, China, and America will have to figure out how this will reshape the world in the future. If you look at the Ukrainian conflict from a different angle, you could almost say that it is a very controlled way of three world powers to create a new status quo, a power balance, so it could take years for Ukraine to end the conflict what was never about the independence of Ukraine but the power balance of three world powers.